everyone, and welcome to the latest in BI Kelsey's workshop series. I'm Mike Boland, Chief Analyst with BI Kelsey, and today we're going to go over call commerce, the what and the why. So how phone calls are becoming a currency. So before we begin, just a few quick words about me. I'm a 10-year industry analyst, former journalist. I cover mobile and social primarily, and especially angled towards BI Kelsey's core coverage, which is all things local. So any location targeted media, content, or advertising. So for example, I wrote a report on this topic, call commerce, about 18 months ago, which you can see here. And I'm currently working on a refresh of that paper. So today's topic is very much top of mind. So the best place to start when talking about call commerce is consumer usage. So let's get right into it. So the underlying driver for a lot of the things we're going to be going over today is mobile usage and how that's driving call volume. So currently, smartphone penetration in the US is about 79% and quickly growing. And the majority of searches are happening on mobile devices, according to Google. Now, importantly, about half of those searches have local intent to find something to do or to buy or to see or to eat in one's immediate vicinity. And this is a key foundational point that underlies lots of the things we're going to be discussing today. So drilling down further, I put together a mobile ad revenue forecast twice per year, which has turned out to be very accurate in the past 7 years I've been doing it. And these are the figures we just released a few months ago, and they project mobile ad revenues in the US to go from $22.7 billion in 2015 to about $62.2 billion by 2020. Now, importantly, the share of that total that is attributed to location-targeted mobile ads is about 37%, growing to 43% by 2020. And that has a lot to do with the figures we saw on the previous slide, that mobile usage skews towards local intent, but also several other factors we measure. Now, to unpack that a bit further and to go one level deeper, one of the ways we subdivide that ad spend is by format. And the clear takeaway here is that search is the leading form of mobile advertising and will continue to grow throughout our forecast period. And there are a lot of reasons for that, including higher premiums and ad rates when compared with things like traditional display, and also higher performance due to search's intent-driven use case. But what all this really leads up to is the implications for our main topic today of mobile search as a driver of local commerce, and especially through phone calls. Now, the prevalence of mobile search is important here because it correlates highly to local actions and conversions. So to back that up a bit, here are some data from Google that show that 3 out of every 4 mobile searches trigger additional actions and conversions. Now, those actions are things like visiting a store or making a purchase and making phone calls. And these are all very locally oriented actions and are highly valued actions from the perspective of advertisers looking for a tangible return on their ad spend. So taking this a step further, these actions aren't just happening at high volumes, but they're also happening quickly. So on the same slide, you can see that 55% of purchase-related conversions happen within 1 hour from the initial search. So that tells me that mobile users are indeed lower funnel, high-intent consumers. They're literally an hour away from a conversion, and therefore the opportunity to influence buying decisions is high, much higher than any other media we analyze, in fact. So what this all tells me is that all signs point to very compelling reasons to capture this user intent. The intent is there so publishers and advertisers who aren't providing optimized content or ads that include actionable cues for users to take action are missing a large opportunity. So, what are some of these calls to action? There are a lot of them, and they're growing in prevalence as app developers, publishers, and advertisers catch on to these usage realities that mobile consumers are ready to transact. So, for example, we see a proliferation of action buttons, And one of the ways that this has played out is the buy button in feed-based social media like Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and Twitter. It seems like everyone has a buy button now. We're also seeing things like buttons to message a business or schedule an appointment or book a reservation, or what Starbucks just came out with, which is to order and pay for your coffee before you get there and skip the line to just grab it and go. So there are a lot of ways that this trend is playing out, but I'd like to zero in on one of the highest value functions in this emerging list, which is click to call and call analytics, or what we're calling as an overall field call commerce. Now, because a buy button only addresses e-commerce, the much larger opportunity is in driving these offline conversions. And we've been saying for years that e-commerce only represents about 7% of US consumer spending. The rest is all offline. So based on that, my prediction is that these action buttons will start to lean more towards driving offline actions, and that includes phone calls. And we're already seeing this with Facebook's call button, which you can see to the right, and I'll spend some time talking about that more in a minute. There are also long-standing call buttons in things like Google's local extensions that plant these types of calls to action within search results, So this importantly comes down to a few basic realities that are causing growth in call volume, because it's correlated to the overall growth in smartphone and mobile engagement. So for one, there's a simple fact that the smartphone bolts a search and discover device with a phone and a native dialer and voice input. So on a hardware level, it makes a lot of sense for phone calls to be a natural handoff from points of mobile engagement. It also comes down to deeper and more scientific angles, which is that humans have a biological imperative to communicate by voice. And that applies to most human interactions, but especially in commerce due to its kind of level of complexity. And it's kind of ironic, despite the automation and e-commerce of the digital era, the complexities of many transactions still require voice communications and talking to another human. And that isn't going to go away anytime soon. And it's important to note that not only are calls resulting, but they're high value, high intent calls from transaction-ready consumers. And this is especially true in high consideration and complex purchases such as autos or financial services and healthcare, where you really have to talk to a person, and not just for social reasons, but just sheer practicality. And this is an important point because the value of leads in these high-ticket categories, like autos, is so high, so it's ripe. It's a ripe area for monetization. So it's also taking over many different formats and mobile channels, as consumers' points of engagement on mobile are themselves rapidly expanding. So for example, click to call is often thought of in a search context, but it's not just search. The opportunity really lives in many places. And that basically includes the growing number of places phone numbers are showing up in mobile channels. This ties closely to the trend I mentioned earlier of having everything more actionable. So that includes display ads, which are getting increasingly dynamic, with actionable buttons like call links. It can include landing pages such as your mobile website or directory apps like Yelp and Foursquare and others. It also includes social apps, which is actually the fastest growing category that is driving calls to businesses. So I want to spend a little bit of time drilling down on that. So we're seeing a lot of the ways that social media is trying to monetize natively, and that increasingly includes in-feed ad units like Facebook newsfeed ads. So that's nothing new. But what is new is that these native ad units are increasingly becoming actionable with buttons to engage a business. So we've seen a lot of activity around the buy button in mobile interfaces, as I mentioned earlier. But for reasons I mentioned earlier, we're going to see the growth in buttons to facilitate offline commerce, and the call button is certainly one of them. And we're already seeing traction there. So Twitter has experimented with click-to-call buttons that give advertisers tools to let their customers call them directly from promoted tweets. And Facebook integrated call buttons, as noted earlier. And you can see it here on this screen. So I expect to see a lot more of this type of thing in the coming weeks and months, and especially within social apps. So now what I'd like to do is quantify some of these trends with some of the call volume and conversion data we're seeing. So here's some more BIA-Kelsey forecast data showing mobile call volume. So the top line finding is that calls driven to businesses from all mobile content formats total about 93 billion this year, growing to about 160 billion by 2019. And this includes both mobile apps and the mobile web. So search is the clear winner here in terms of call volume. And that's really a function of its intent-based nature, which tends to drive a lot of calls. And also the intuitive handoff from search to call that's being driven by tools like call extensions in search results. Now, you can also see how other more mobile ad formats or mobile formats in general are trending as call drivers. And I won't go into all of them right now, but one notable finding is that social media is the smallest but fastest growing format from which calls will be generated. And that results from the rise of native social ads and things like, call buttons and everything we went over on the previous slide. And that growth will mostly come at the expense of traditional display, where we see relatively flat growth. So one thought I want to make sure I leave you with is that these calls are happening either way. All of the usage trends and mobile realities are going to send these massive volumes of calls to businesses. So it really only becomes a question of capturing the opportunity. And it's a question of what marketers do to get ready for all of these calls and treat it as an opportunity to get better data, better sense of ROI, and make better decisions. It's all about driving those calls, channeling them to the right places, tracking, analyzing them, and then iterating and optimizing marketing campaigns accordingly and on an ongoing basis. So it's important to note that this happens on two levels. The first main area is marketing. And in that sense, call analytics is a play towards driving high quality leads through the strategic placement of click-to-call links and getting a better sense of ROI and campaign attribution, and that in turn drives more informed marketing decisions on an ongoing basis. On the second level, which we didn't go over as much today, is service and support. So outside of a marketing context, we're talking about call analytics to intelligently filter and route calls more effectively so that callers can get to the right reps faster and preserve revenue generating opportunities and other important metrics like customer satisfaction and hold times and service agents' general effectiveness and productivity and training and quality control and things like that. So winding down, I have a few slides here about how all of this applies to marketers in light of some of the interesting trends in technology that I'm tracking, which are really empowering people in marketing roles to implement a lot of the technologies that we're talking about today. So I'm going to go over two interrelated trends, and these have a lot to do with organizational dynamics and the evolving ways software is being bought and sold. So the first trend is that marketing departments are becoming more self-sufficient and less reliant upon the IT department for purchasing and managing software platforms. Now, this is great because in the past, being under the jurisdiction of IT has been a barrier to adoption in marketing technology. IT departments tend to be rather risk averse. So this trend is becoming very empowering for those in marketing roles to be more effective and to budget and implement many of the call commerce and call tracking and analytics platforms. And it goes back to a quote that you may have heard, which is that by 2017, CMOs will spend more on IT than their counterpart CIOs. So that really serves to further frame the opportunity in that not only all of these great tools exist in terms of call monetization, call tracking, call analytics, but the ability for marketers to actually implement them will continue to be empowered with political capital and budget from this trend. Now, the second trend really works towards that same end with the evolution and dynamics of the software world, and specifically the lower barriers to robust platform integration. So the rise of cloud-based software platforms and SaaS service models allow marketers to manage and run these types of platforms and any kind of marketing software without the requirement of lots of technological knowledge and capital investment and on-site servers. So trend one was more about political and budgetary issues. Trend 2 is more technical, but they collectively result in lots more empowerment for marketers to do the things or implement the types of things we're talking about today. So for any marketers listening, the moral of the story is that you have, if you haven't already felt some of these benefits, these are just 2 trends that could improve your ability to have a real near-term impact with call analytics. So I will put a period there. I hope this has been valuable in terms of the what and the why. What is call monetization? Why should you be paying attention to it? That hopefully tees up further discussions that we will circle back with in separate presentations about the how. What are the best practices? What are the different platforms out there? And how should they be implemented? What are best practices? And this is something we'll be covering, as I mentioned, in our upcoming refreshed white paper on the topic of call commerce. So we thank you for listening. This has been another B.I. Kelsey Analyst Workshop. Here is my contact information. Please reach out to me with any questions or to engage further. So I'm Mike Boland, and thank you for watching.